Okay, Dave, you want to start off?
Sure. My name is David Barlow. I'm an actor working predominantly in the theater in the New York City area. Uh, Work here in the city, around the country, sometimes in Europe. And I've written for the theater a little bit, and happy to be here, Jeff.
Thanks. Go ahead, Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim Fiori. I'm the executive director of Express Children's Theater in Houston, Texas. I've written probably about 30 plays, professionally produced. I've also written screenplays and novels and children's poetry and regular poetry. And I've used a lot of Jeff's principles for many years because I studied with him about 20 years ago, and it kind of changed my life. It really did. It changed my writing life. I understood writing in a very different way from one class. So sign up with Jeff. And now I have a great career. So
Yeah, tell us about all the children that come through your theater shows.
well, we do about 75,000 kids a year see my plays. We do 5 original plays a year. And then came COVID. So now we're creating films and adapting some of our plays, and also just creating new online content for kids. So a lot more kids are seeing our work now.
That's great. That's really wonderful. Okay, so let's jump in and pick a story. '83. Let's see what '83 is. It's a weird one I made up the other night. I should never have invited them to crash in my living room, but who knew that the Berlin Clown Ensemble were all ex-cons who preyed on suckers like me for their retirement income. I've been duct taped face up to my dinner table for 2 days now, while they ransack my apartment filled with collectible albums and break through the ceiling into my vacationing neighbor's penthouse apartment.
Okay, well, just from the fact that they are the Berlin Clown Ensemble preying on suckers for their retirement income, it's either they're, really old clowns and they're like feeling the pinch of, the current economic situation. Maybe inflation is just raging at this point and they're desperate, or they're really, your young clowns who are very responsible and with an eye to their retirement. Of course, when I was thinking about going to clown school many years ago, I think the very fact that I was thinking about going to clown school spoke to how irresponsible I was.
It gives me an idea when you say that, because the protagonist seems remarkably helpless, having been duct taped to the table for a couple days already. But what if, for instance, when he or she finds out that they're doing this for their retirement, what if he or she was a stockbroker and starts talking to them about how they could, he's like pitching them like a client, like if you guys bought, SpaceX or something and doubled down on it every 3 months, you guys could be millionaires. Let me get you into a package here. That's like,
yes, he's trying to talk his way out of it through
yes,
financial advice, and have they considered Ethereum and NFTs and
exactly.
Yeah.
And what's your liquid, how liquid are you? And because he or she has nothing, like it's all you can do is talk at that point. And I could also potentially see this person maybe even marrying one of them at the end of the story. I don't know, I'm just like tossing out some crazy what ifs.
Well, this is the flip then that my mind went to, that includes both of these things. So here's the dilemma. This is what he thinks because this is what they tell him. they tell him, we're just looking for our retirement income, and the guy upstairs has the money, and we're going to break into his house, and that's why you're tied up. And but what he actually finds out is that the guy upstairs stole all of their retirement income, and that he is some international, asshole, whatever.
Like a embezzler.
But
Yeah.
before he knows that, and I like the idea that he's like a regular guy, like a stockbroker, an investment banker, or whatever, that he's trying to convince them, he's trying to do all the reasonable things that you would do with criminals, because he's trying to stop them, because he thinks what they're doing is wrong. But then when he finds out what they're actually doing, suddenly they're doing the right thing, and he wants to help them. So he could end up marrying one of them at the end if they can get away with it. And then it turns out the guy upstairs is really dangerous. And now he's in way over his head, more than he expected. And all they are clowns. So the clowns have to figure out how to take this guy out in his goon squad or whatever it is. And all they have are clown bits that they can turn around and use as lethal weapons, or
Right.
whatever, that's what they know. But they're good-hearted clowns who are just trying to get their money back from this asshole.
So then is it the old movie FX with Brian Brown, where he was a special effects guy in the movies who uses all his special effects equipment to take out, I can't remember what the crime is, but he's up against a mob boss.
Brian Dennehy was in that too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this would be like FX with
clowns,
clown shoes, and squirting flowers.
And it's interesting. I've worked with a lot of clowns. I've done some clown work through the children's theater, and it's sort of like a combination of magic, magic tricks and clown tricks, which, if this is a comedy, which it kind of feels like because it's clowns, then you can go really far with the crazy bits that they can come up with to try to stop these people from.
Right. And I could also see the protagonist running off with the clown troupe for his own protection, like to disappear.
Yeah.
If the guy upstairs doesn't know who hit him, then he's not going straight to the clowns like, you guys came and got your money back. He wouldn't know there's just a chunk of money gone, or I don't know.
He really has to earn their trust to do that.
Yeah. And I like that he's been like sort of a yammering salesman, sort of desperately trying to talk his way out of or into something. Like, I could triple your guy's money. That's also a classic thing that happens in Sherlock Holmes, where Sherlock is brought in to investigate a really grisly murder and then finds out that the person who got murdered is a really heinous criminal, and he helps the killer elude the cops. You did a good job. Go this way, they're coming that way.
Right. So the victim protagonist of the story could think that this guy is this, icon of money and power, and he has it all. Right. He looks up to him and all of this stuff, and then he finds out through the clowns that he has this completely different, different person than he thought he was. That also has a little bit of a dilemma aspect in it too, that he wants to protect this guy, and then he finds out. I'm thinking of the story, Tower Heist, was it called? With Alan Alda and Ben Stiller, where Alan Alda was the this rich guy in a penthouse all the way at the top of this building, and Ben Stiller was the manager of the apartment building. And he gave him, it was like a Bernie Madoff story, and he gave them all their money to invest, all the employees, all their retirement income, and Alan Alda stole it all. And then everybody in this little group of people in the building all conspired to get the money back from Alan Alda. It was just this sort of topical kind of switch where the people you think are these great, you know, like Warren Buffett or whatever. I mean, he's a bad
Right.
example, but you really find out that they're just screwing everybody over, and then everybody wants revenge over rich people, which is kind of what drives the fun of these sort of stories.
Right.
Where, you know, poor clowns, poor retiring clowns get revenge from the powers that be who've been screwing us all over for our entire lives. That's sort of the
Right.
audience glee in rooting for these kind of characters to best this.
Right. And our protagonist runs off and joins the circus at the end.
He joins the circus.
Makes for a kind of
it's cool to initially, you know, because clowns also by definition are just as terrifying as they are anything else. To be really
that's right.
scared of them initially.
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, we're thinking like the Joker and his crew
Right.
coming in and, you know, masks of the presidents into the banks and whatnot.
And they'd be playing on that. They'd be trying to scare them.
They're trying to emulate that 100%. And so we as an audience start out really rooting against them. And
Right.
then gradually we start rooting for them. But that's also not to say that their plan maybe backfires. Like they do manage to break up into the penthouse apartment above or whatever, but the rich guy or the mob boss or whoever it is, that's actually his mistress's you know, home, and little plot twists like that.
So that they'd have to then capture the mistress, or she'd walk in on them unexpectedly in the middle of them shaking the whole place down to try to find their thing.
Yeah, something where they feel like they succeed in their objective, and then they're throwing a big curveball.
Right. And it would make sense in that type of story that the guy would hide his thing at his mistress's apartment, because then it's once removed from him. So if there's a search warrant or anything, so might they have believable intelligence that the MacGuffin is hidden in this apartment? And would they know what they're looking for? I don't know.
Yeah, because that's the simple thing. They have to find the password, you know, and they know that the password is hidden there. Like just this, it seems like this is kind of a simple MacGuffin story, because it's the rest of it is so potentially complicated, with all the different clowns and all the different characters and what he wants, and then adding the mistress, which is fun because maybe she goes off and joins them at the end too. I love that idea of that final scene being in Berlin with German, you know, the German clown circus thing, and the clowns come out and the guy is dressed up like one of the clowns, and maybe the girl is with him too. And it's fun that they're, you know, he discovers he has this, like when he was a kid, he really wanted to be an actor or whatever, but he went and became a stockbroker, and he's good at it whenever, but he longs to be free. And then at the end, he gets his freedom, he gets the money, he gets the girl, he's complete at the end, but he doesn't realize how shut down and small his life is at the beginning. He longs for it, but he doesn't realize how tiny his existence actually is. And these clowns help him. It's really a great idea.
Yeah, they help him. Like he finds his freedom. And then another thing that's funny though is that they're German clowns, so they're really not very funny.
They're German clowns too.
Very like austere and like esoteric, and but like he finds fulfillment in joining this troupe of you know, unfunny clowns.
Yeah, expressionistic clowns.
Expressionistic, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I know a lot of Germans, and a lot of them are quite funny and loose, and the opposite of the picture of how Germans are, but there's still so much mileage in that the famous precision and focus of the Germans is certainly something to play with.
That's true. I mean, there's certainly many characters in Brecht who are, you know, wildly out there. Yeah.
Right.
So.
And many of the Germans I knew were hippies, so they were probably in full revolt against the whole. But that's probably the way these clowns would be. But there is certainly room for that in there. I think a whole troop of clowns that aren't funny doesn't give us as much mileage, but I think the fact that some of them aren't funny at all could be really funny, even though almost like they're like the straight man and the.
Yeah, that's good. If they have like intra-clown debates about, you know, what really constitutes good humor, and that could be just, you know, little the
Right.
stuff that's happening in between.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, because, you know, the clowns, the people that I've known who are clowns, professional clowns, they really are deeply clowns, and they see everything through the world of what is funny and what'll work and what won't work. Like actors are, you know, it's just kind of it becomes your orientation in life in a way. But clowns in particular are sort of like stand-ups. There is a particular kind of personality almost where they're very, very serious about being clowns. They're very professional about it. And clown school is very rigorous. People don't know that. They think it's just, you know, pies in the face or whatever, but no. And there's a lot of, you know, the physicality of it.
There's so many skills.
And as you get older, it gets more dangerous. Doing those bits and falling down and all of that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of pathos too that could come with these. I mean, it's funny, if they're older clowns, then it could be that they have like a younger clown who's in training and they're sort of teaching him as they go through it. And this guy kind of becomes the accountant or whatever he is, becomes like the next generation of clowns. They're the clowns sort of that they've been looking for to carry on the tradition of their work. He's the next generation of clown.
The protagonist? Yeah, that's the most transformational. That's interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing about clowns is that as you go way back in history, clowns and priests have the same heritage. That the way back in history, the stage was used as the altar, and religious dramas were presented on stage, and it was for the benefit of those people who were gathered there. So clowns and priests have similar roots.
Yeah, and there's different kinds of clowns too, which could be a way to build the personalities of the actual, you know, the danger of an idea like this in a bad movie is that the clowns are all sort of the same. You can't really tell them apart, or they're all just loud and they're rude and it's fart jokes and what, you know, going for the easy thing.
Right.
But the beauty of an idea like this, to me, just looking at character, is that each of the clowns kind of have their own, as they do. There are different kinds of clowns that the clowns in this troupe represent those different kinds. Like there are clowns who just do the physical thing. They're the sad clowns. They're the crazy clowns. They're the clowns who do acrobatics. They're the clowns who are like the kids clowns who do the, you know, the flower jokes. They're like sort of like in Commedia dell'arte, you know, they have their own, I can't recall them right now, but they have their own sort of practices.
Names even.
Yeah. Yes. There is a strata for kinds of clowns.
Each have an archetype. Sorry.
Yes, they're archetypes. They're clown archetypes, and bits that go with it. Just in, you know, in the history of clowning.
And since they're getting older, might some of them be like Groucho Marx with his TV show You Bet Your Life, where it's all wit?
Yeah. Those verbal clowns. It's, you know,
maybe
there's
some of them are quite literate, so they're reading his books while they're hanging around and going through his album collection, going,
and doing
my God, you have this?
Yes, jazz aficionados.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. There are musical clowns too.
Huh. Could almost be like turn into like a rollicking dance party. They get the good albums going or something.
Yeah.
I think you're.
Dave, do you know any of the archetypes from Commedia dell'arte? I remember they had
Oh God, I'm
names
dredging
for the
from
characters,
you know,
right?
Pantalone and
Yeah.
um, you know, there's the buffoon, and then there's the miser, and then there's the young aspiring lover, and yeah, I'm forgetting the exact titles, but
The Italian names, yeah.
And they
So-
would get thrown together in improv situations, right? And they would just kind of improv on stage with those types of characters. I don't recall.
yeah, or there would be a fully fleshed out, you know, play, and
Okay.
and if we're talking a commedia dell'arte, that is with masks. Then there's just the clowning where you put on a red nose, and that's all the transformation you need. And particularly in that, from my training in grad school, what always worked was when somebody kind of let their inner child guide the way, and so that it became painfully human and vulnerable. And that's what would normally be the most hilarious, is when someone
Kind of naked emotional.
yeah, with a real kind of like childlike wonder, and
maybe childlike honesty too, saying things that most people wouldn't say.
Totally. And you know, even if what they wanted in that moment was, you know, to steal something, but like it's the vulnerability that, as Tim said, evokes pathos. And that's the kind of clowns that are the most remarkable to watch, are the ones that really kind of emotionally you can connect to.
Yeah, and it's built in a little bit here because they're old, and that makes it.
I saw Marcel Marceau live,
Oh,
maybe 1970 or something like that. He was pretty old at that point, but he was so engaging and had that genuine emotional connection to the audience.
It's like
another good friend of mine
Samuel
was
Beckett's clowns, you know.
Pardon?
They're Samuel Beckett. All of his characters are basically clowns.
yeah.
Huh.
And if they are approached, not through but through like emotional honesty, then you know, his existentialism becomes like super profound through the humor.
Right. There's a great film too that Fellini made called The Clowns, where
Yes.
you know that film, where he goes and he tries to track down all the old famous clowns, and they're all in retirement because they're too old to clown, and then he interviews them about what clowning is. And you know, they're Italian, they're like, hey, the clown, blah, 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 and they're going on and on and on about the profoundness of being a clown. And it's really touching because they're in their homes and they're sort of, you know, they're older and they're kind of broken down. Maybe that's
Right.
what sort of struck me about this. I think I've been flashing on that movie without really knowing it, because it made such an impression on me of just older performers. Like, you think about, you know, acting is one thing, but clowning is a whole other, like, what do old clowns do? They can't clown anymore, but they still have this great spirit of clowning in them. They're funny, but they're serious, and they're kind of sad because they're emotionally connected too. And they can't do their work anymore. It's not like an older actor who could get a gig. Old clowns can't work. It's like old dancers, you know, maybe they teach, they could do that. So it's kind of built in their vulnerability.
Also, they've kind of dedicated their lives to bringing joy, and worked hard to save their money, and these most vulnerable, valuable people have been ripped off by this incredibly unscrupulous person that this guy might practically salute in the elevator every day.
Yeah.
Because he
Oh, that
looks up
makes
to
me
this.
so mad. I want to break in and steal his money.
Right. So there's a growth curve for the protagonist as he learns the reality of what's happened. Maybe one of the clowns is assigned to keep an eye on this guy while the rest of them ransack and hunt. And if it's a woman, then they might really strike up a relationship or something. I'm just thinking about the possibility of him falling in love through the process of this. And do they start out talking money and investments and then find out we did invest, we did all that. And this clown upstairs ripped us off.
And is the mistress already feeling two-timed herself so that she can, you know, be an advocate or
the one upstairs?
The one upstairs, yeah.
Yeah.
That's who you're talking about, but yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting wrinkle. It kind of occurred to me for 1 second because I thought Tim said something a while ago, like maybe the person upstairs ran off with them as well, which is also possible if she flips to help them because she's been manipulated or hustled, or she overheard the guy talking on the phone about how he'll throw her to the wolves if need be. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
or she finds out there's another mistress.
Yeah.
He had to narrow it down. There was more than one mistress where this password could be hidden. And they figured out it was her, but she doesn't know about it. And when she finds that out, that's it. Because she's so tired of getting fucked over by these rich men and being used and thrown aside that she's
so then she would join the hunt and go, okay, I know.
That's like a clown. That's like a clown turn too. You know, I don't know what the word is, where somebody finds something out and then she goes from being totally loyal to, okay, we got to get this guy. And she becomes on the side.
And definitely something has to really be in it for her, you know, for there to be a good quid pro quo, you know, like, she's not going to help them unless she's getting a much better deal through aiding and abetting their plan. Because otherwise, why would she, even though she's disgruntled, why would she
rock the boat?
Risk her situation.
Right. Well, certainly the if the protagonist is a stockbroker, he could certainly what do you call it, sort of orchestrate like a 10% finder's fee or something like that. That would be potentially fair. I don't know. If she's gonna get blown out of her gig, she might need more than 10%, but it also depends on the degree to which the guy they're ripping off has set her up to be double-crossed or thrown to the wolves or ripped off. I don't know. It's I don't know. I mean, they could have her duct taped to the table upstairs too, and as she learns more and more about what they're up to, she sides with them the same way the guy downstairs is. It must be a funny scene where the two of them are sort of yelling to each other, each duct taped to a table, yelling to each other in a conversation through the hole in the floor. It's kind of a weird moment.
Duct tape. It should be I did a clown show a few years ago about a disabled clown. I forgot about this. You know how clowns, they pull the out of their
long
sleeves?
scarf.
That's what they should tie them up with.
Right.
You know, they should use clown things.
Right.
Tie them all up and then tie them to the table or whatever.
Totally.
But it, you know, there is a theme that's kind of suggested by this too, apart from the financial revenge, honesty sort of piece of it, where the protagonist is living a life that he doesn't, that's not authentic.
Right. It's about coming to life, waking up and
About coming to life.
finding what you really want and what you really value.
So then if she is going to join them, then she would have a similar, you know, come to Jesus moment of
Potentially, yeah. I mean, that's what we're talking about. Yeah. So it doesn't have to all be financially motivated. She might want to run off and join them too. For all,
it has to be about love.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
it's pure.
living an honest life, living a life where you were aligned with a sense of inner purpose beyond just survivalism.
Right.
Right.
So it can't be about the money. None of it's really about, except for the older clowns, but it's their money. For the rest of them, it can't be about money.
Well, and once they recover their retirement resources, they still have some kind of chunk of years left that they can now really enjoy and work with. They're like, they're switched back on, they're good again. So that it can really be like a genuinely fun clown troupe that these two people, either one or two, could join and have a great time with. So if he brings them home, you could almost start the story with him opening the door and, you know, 15 people coming in with him. You know, the fridge is over there, help yourself, the bathroom's over there. They're like, thank you so much. And then they grab him, tie him to the table.
Well, why
And,
does
I
he let
mean,
them
they
in?
go straight for the ceiling. They're not ransacking his place. They're after the guy upstairs.
I think Tim's point is we have to go back to why is this straight-laced guy letting in a posse of clowns into his place to begin with? Like,
Yeah,
how has he let his guard down
totally.
that much?
Well,
Right.
so if he when he was younger aspired to be a performer,
Right.
then he would go see the clowns when they come in town,
Right.
or they could set him up, because their job is to get into the house. They got to figure
Okay.
out a way to trick him into letting them in, right? So
Right.
it could be,
So really, all he has to do is let if it's a con, if it's a straight con, then the girl outside, you know, twists her ankle. She's beautiful. He's like, I'll help you. She's like, I can't walk. He's like, come with me. She opens the window, and all of a sudden there's 15 of
no,
them.
they got to
there.
pull a car up. They got to pull a car up, and all the clowns got to come out of the car.
Right.
And that's good though, because you know, from ever since childhood, he wanted to like join the circus or whatever, but he, you know, chose the responsible route. And finally, he befriends these people who are his idols. It's like in Breaking Away, the bicycle movie from way back.
Right.
Yeah.
The Italian bikers.
Oh yeah.
With the Italian bikers, and then they stick a wrench into his spokes, and down he goes. And so the sense of betrayal from clowns turning on him is deeply wounding, you know. And then we go from there.
And it could be, he could do this on a regular basis, like bring a jazz musician home to sleep on his couch, because it's a fun way to get some quality time with people that he idolizes, that he, you know, he saw their show, and he brings the drummer home to sleep on the couch, and that could be normal for him. I remember when I was a kid and we would go to Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, and like at 8 years old, just the glitter on like a, a toy was dazzling. I mean, we wanted that thing, that $8, whatever it was, covered with glitter, and then you get to be 14 and like this, I used to be dazzled by this. It blew me away. And now it's like, they just glued some crap to it. It's like, it's amazing how when you're at a certain age, that stuff really hits you in that child magic-like way.
It's magic.
And, for that kind of to be coming back to him in a certain way or something. And I would think that if the woman sort of guarding him or keeping an eye on him, there's room for such a dynamic conversation there that would be part argument and part agreement about how fun the job is and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I like that idea too, Jeff, of her seducing him. If she's the one who, ultimately she's playing him, but if she's the one that he's going to end up with,
right,
then that sets it up beautifully right at the beginning, that she's the one who tricks him into bringing her in. And then the van pulls up, to the side of the house, and all the clowns start pouring into the house or whatever, because they're not dressed up as clowns. I mean, they don't live their lives dressed up. But these old clowns in this Fellini movie, they were fucking funny, these old guys. They were clownish in the way that they acted. They didn't have to have the heavy makeup and all of that stuff. They didn't have to be on stage, to have those kind of personalities, although there has to be some sort of set piece where they're all in costume. So they have to try to, it has to end up at the circus somehow. It has to be something where we get to see them in their glory as clowns, that's sort of the big confrontation somehow with the mean guy and his goons or whatever, that maybe they get the password and then they're going back to the circus to fly out on the thing, and then he shows up with his guys or whatever, or there's something more orchestrated that they have to trick him and get him there and whatever. But it just seems like if you have clowns in the circus, you got to have the climax has to take place. Has to take place at the circus.
I love that, and the story totally needs that, but it also brings up the question of, if they are going to recover their money and disappear quietly so that the guy never knew who hit him, then if it's a bunch of clowns, then he's going to know who they are, presumably.
Well, what if these clowns, they steal whatever it is they're going to steal, and they make a run for it, they get chased, and they run to another circus. They run to a clown convention, whatever, and there's 1,000 clowns. And these guys got to figure out, so they have to go into their makeup and make up themselves as clowns. It's like the end of the Mike Nichols film, La Cage aux Folles, the one with a bird, birdcage, where they disappear into a sea of clowns, and then they don't know which clowns, they don't know which clown stole it and who didn't. They don't know what to do from there, and they could get away from there and never have their identity stolen, and you still get a set piece where they have to fight off, and then the other clowns would join in to fight these guys off, because they know that they're being pursued, or whatever. Maybe it's a clown convention that's in town that these guys are coming for as a ruse to go and steal this guy's password, whatever the MacGuffin is of.
But not to be a stickler for a fine point in a movie like this, but I think it would be a question asked by the audience of, how many different clown groups has this guy embezzled from? Couldn't he pretty much count them on one hand and know that it's?
Well, yes, but he would never know their faces. He wouldn't know who they are. He would have nothing to do with that. It's his people who do that stuff. You know what I mean? It's not like
Right.
he would. It's like you said, maybe he's embezzled from the clown, because you can do anything with this kind of crazy
Yeah.
stuff. It's the clown pension fund that clowns all over the world, you know,
Right.
belong to or whatever, and that they're just representing those clowns. And there's too
Right. So
many
then,
of them to kill them all, or
right. So when the bad guy says you and whose army, there actually is an army of clowns that are out for him.
it's very funny. I did
Now,
a show.
would you almost have a cavalry scene where car after car after car streams up and just hundreds of clowns are like
Delightful.
billowing out of these cars coming into
Delightful.
this building for the final showdown or
Yeah.
something?
Totally.
Yeah, and it could be that simple where he just is so outnumbered, because there can't be any kind of real graphic violence in something
Right.
like this. But he's just so outnumbered that he doesn't even know which clown is which, and he gets arrested. They get the thing and they turn him in, and the cops show up and he's taken away, and we know that he's impotent at that point. And then
Right.
the clowns are gonna, they're gonna get away. They're gonna get away with it at this point.
And that's a kind of a really exuberant ending, which can really kind of complete the transformation of the protagonist. It's like at the end of My Favorite Year, where with Peter O'Toole, where the one, I don't know if you guys know that movie, but there's this one guy who never talks. He's in the writer's room in a comedy show, the Sid Caesar show, and he never talks. But at the end of the story, where everything goes completely bananas, he goes, I love this. And everything stops, and they turn to see him, and they'd never seen him speak. You know, it's the kind of thing where somebody completely comes out of their shell and there's no going back. They're not going to go back to their previous life.
Right.
So they're in love. They have a new bunch of best friends. They've helped save them. They've had a great jazz party in the middle of it all, and going off to become a clown.
And they have a mission in life. Clowns.
Yeah.
The mission of the clown is to delight people. They bring joy to the world.
Yeah, and the world needs it. They take their job very
The world
seriously.
needs it. That's right. And they're serious
There's
about
people
being
who are ill, who've lost relatives. It means a lot.
And in some cases, it is a way for, the actor who really has found their true clown has also, in a sense, found themselves. Like you get to be more authentically yourself through the filter of the clown.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, you really have that. I've seen that in you in a number of different roles. You're really tapped into that.
Mm-hmm. It's probably why I became an actor, because it helped me kind of, poke a hole through, just repression and
right.
be able to express what wanted to be expressed.
Yeah, it's really about honesty and
authenticity.
Yeah, and finding a source of oxygen in a life that might be airless in certain ways. And like, you can't go back to the sort of shut down societal, this is how you're supposed to act and all that, which I would think our protagonist would personify, that, that it is shut down to a degree. So there's a real arc of transformation.
Very safe. It's very, very safe. And it's so fucking boring. It's the opposite.
Right.
The opposite of a clown is boring.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not criminal or dirty, or it's just dull. Or you can be a clown.
This story kind of reminds me of the movie King of Hearts.
Yeah.
It's a World War I movie, and the Germans they've set a giant booby trap with a massive set of explosives hidden in the town square, and it's going to go off at midnight. So everybody in the town, in this little like German World War I city, evacuates because it's going to blow. The Germans are like, everybody out, you know, the Americans are coming. So they leave town, and the mental institution, which is in town, gets unlocked, and the people in the institution come out and take over the city for 12 hours and live a free life. And the British soldier is interacting with them, and he's trying to find the bomb, and these people are all nuts, but he doesn't know they're from an institution, and he interacts with them, falls in love with one of them, and kind of awakens, and then manages to just defuse the bomb at the end, and ends up going into the institution with them to be with his people. It's a beautiful love story, unusual story. Let me find out who that actor is just for the heck of it.
Alan Bates?
That's Alan Bates, yes, and
Alan
Genevieve
Bates.
Bujold. Phenomenal movie, really phenomenal movie.
They all think that they're like, one thinks he's the mayor and another one thinks
Yes.
he's like the Pope. And this guy meets him and he just believes them. He believes
they're
they are
populating
what
the
they say
town.
they are.
Yeah.
And it's so heartfelt and sweet.
Yes, it is. It's an exuberant freedom at the end in a certain way, and it's an awakening, and it's an embracing of real life, and seeing that the world around him is insane, and that these people are the sane ones, are the ones who know how to really live.
Mhm.
But our protagonist has to also wrestle with his primary allegiance to safety and security and conventionalism,
Right.
so that the kind of the cement around him is cracked and chipped, you know, step
Yes.
by step, for
Right.
him to really gain the courage and the awakening that awaits him.
Absolutely, and that's really the central dilemma of the story, is that it's unacceptable to let them come in and not only ruin his life in a certain way, but shatter his allegiance to all these conventional mores. And it's equally unacceptable to, I guess, like, not let their breath of life into his world. He's kind of damned if he lets them in, and he's damned if he doesn't. And that's a universal dilemma, that if you are sort of poured in concrete in a rigid set of values, that it's unacceptable to let go of them, but it's equally unacceptable to let go of that which awakens you to possibilities beyond that. It's probably not the best statement of how it's universal, but there is a universality in that.
Well, I think it's the thing where you're in a situation that's safe, but it's not satisfying.
Right, and that really is the security versus adventure dilemma,
That's it.
which is very universal. Like, it
Right.
sucks being a bank teller because it's kind of lifeless, but it sucks being a starving painter living on peanut butter sandwiches. And like, you really can't let go of the security, but you can't let go of the adventure. And then it comes to a breaking point where you gotta choose something. And so the crisis, the point at which his dilemma comes to a critical juncture, comes to a crisis around the 2/3, 3/4 point in the story, is going to represent a fundamental shift for him. And then there's 15 minutes of the show left for him to conclusively resolve his dilemma, which in this instance, it probably is a question of the degree to which he can't believe that the guy upstairs did this to them, because that gives him more of a skin to shed at the end, like at the point of decision and action in the face of crisis, where he's like, you guys are right. He's a monster. Let's take him down. Instead of like, I don't know, he gives to all these charities, he's friendly, his dog is cute, you should see his girlfriend. It's like, you know, this is a good person. And they're like, So I'm just kind of feeling my way around in there, but it seems like that might be the type of trajectory or one aspect of the trajectory of this type of story.
Well, maybe he works for him. Maybe he has an even more direct relationship to him that isn't just, oh, he's a great guy because I've seen him on TV and stuff. But maybe he's like, not his number two, lower down the chain than that. And that's why the girlfriend lives upstairs, because he can be trusted. He can be trusted to lie to the wife or whatever when they're at work. And, that maybe he was, he has a direct stake in this guy, and that he is genuinely surprised, like Bernie Madoff was. People did not suspect it. People who were closest to him, maybe not his family, who knows, but people who worked with him were just, to me, it's like sort of like Bill Cosby. Of all of the crazy, all of the creeps that came out in the last 10 years, Harvey Weinstein didn't really surprise me. Cosby, that was like, I don't know how to wrap my mind around this, from who I knew of him growing up to like suddenly
dead.
I still can't really process it. I accept it and whatever, but so maybe it's something like that, where it's a guy who has this
charisma.
Yes. And he gives to all these causes, like you're saying, but then we find out that the way he's actually getting his money is this, plus other things of the way he's stealing from people. And this is just one other example. If he's doing it to a lot of people in a lot of situations, then it's even more noble to stop him. But scarier if this guy actually knows him. And then it sort of sets up that confrontation at the end, where this protagonist has to confront him directly and take some sort of an action, a direct action against him. Then the guy knows it's him, he knows it's the guy, and he has to make, it's a harder choice than if it's just somebody he kind of admires. He really needs to have a stake in his relationship with this guy. And maybe the company too, maybe that's part of it.
It took a lot for what's his name, Michael Cohen, to turn on the former president.
Right.
But it helps when you've been indicted.
It all
SDNY, you got nowhere else to turn,
It's true, but in that instance, Michael Cohen knew where all the bodies were buried. That brings up the question of, does this guy know that, or even a percentage of that?
I don't think he can.
Probably not, because he truly believed in this person. Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing that pops to me is that we've been talking about the mechanics of the drama in this story, but the other thing to remember is that the tone of this story should probably be in many ways like a Marx Brothers movie, like these people just running all over and kind of chaotic fun and sort of a wild jazz dance party and juggling, and I don't know, it's just like,
I feel, Jeff, that whatever kind of comedy it is, it's like quirky, it's not just, it's not obvious. It has lots of just unexpected turns, so that we and the characters, like I think we were talking about at the beginning of this call, are more complex than caricature.
Right. So that's a challenge, and it's interesting, and it's almost like the inner life of these clowns is so rich that it adds that flavor to the story, so that they're not like juggling apples while they make breakfast or something. I mean, they might be. It's just it's a question, that's a deeper question in terms of developing this story of how much fun is rolling around versus how much is this a robbery in progress where people have to have their act together.
I just know that as a viewer of this film, if there are any gimmicks, they're not cheap ones.
Right.
Well, I think the way to address that, this is what I do with all the children's theater. It has to be crazy and wild and big, but if you stay true, it's way more interesting and it's easier because you're not inventing bits. It's coming out of the characters naturally. And this is sort of how I'm relating to what you're saying about how do you balance the broadness of the comedy? Because it could just be this crazy broad style of humor,
Right.
with wanting it to be a moving and heartfelt. Is if these clowns are serious about being funny, then they're not juggling just because they're crazy and they want to. No, they're juggling because they're arguing about what's the funniest way to juggle the apples. No, hey, and the Italian clown says, "Hey, we don't do it that way. Let's say, give me the fruit. Give me that fruit. I'll show you what's funny. You want to know funny? I'll show you." And it's coming out of, we're going to perfect this bit because they're so serious about being funny when they're off, because they're all off stage, that maybe there's through lines of it of characters who are arguing the whole time, like the couple that's always arguing about the funniest way to do certain bits.
Right.
So you can add a lot of stuff with that, and they're killing time mostly. They're waiting for him to come home. They got 3 hours. What are we going to do? We're gonna perfect the barking dog routine now, and I'm going to show you how the dog should bark. That's not how a dog barks. I'll show you how the dog. That if you keep it based on them being real about what they're doing, then it's even funnier, I think. And then they actually have a stake in kind of creating the comedy because they're trying to be as funny as possible without just being broad.
And then the guy who's like tied to the table is like chimes in. It's like, excuse me, but what if you do it this way?
That's
like,
great. Yeah.
Wait, he's right.
And then, oh, hey, that's a great idea. Wait a minute. Let's untie one of his hands. Untie one of his hands so he can do it with us. That's a really good way to like start to include him in this. And it's so fun. And they're like, hey, what a great idea that was. You're a natural clown. Then he gets seduced into the whole prospect of it that way too. Then
and the person
really
should
be crazy.
The person should probably actually be tied to a chair instead of a table, because if you're on a table, you can't see them. You're just looking at the ceiling. So chair is a simple adjustment.
Yeah, that's funny.
Puts them in the room.
Yeah.
Unless you stand the table up on end, but a chair just seems so much simpler.
Chair.
Although, if the person was tied to a table and they stand it up, then maybe one of them starts throwing knives.
That's funny. Yeah.
Unless he's tied to his, you know how people have that thing that stretches their back where you can just hang upside down on the table and there's the boots for your feet.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah, because it spins too, doesn't it?
It could.
Yeah.
You hang upside down, but you can come upright too.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of comic possibilities in that.
Yeah. Well, it seems like we've taken it pretty far within the context of this amount of time. It's an interesting, unusual story. And I think we chewed through. Pardon?
I want to see that movie.
Yeah.
I do too, because I want to learn more about true clowns, not just the the birthday party clown, but like real.
Right.
The
kind of philosophers that they are in a certain way.
And I always kind of feel like this is what's missing a lot from more modern films than old films, which is there's this whole angle that's so interesting that people can really relate to, but they don't go for that. They go for just the crazy jokes, and they're just a bunch of clowns who are doing fart jokes and all that kind of stuff. And they lose all these deeper meanings, which to me makes it even funnier and more interesting. And then kids like it, and then adults like it, and then it has meaning, you know, it has meaning for everybody. Just to take it that extra step and say, what is it to really be a clown?
And
Right.
Tim, what you're talking about there is like movie making that is rigorous, you know, which is just, you know, leaning into it with enough rigor to not, you know, not play the cheap hand.
That's right. And that's
Right.
why we're talking about this Alan Bates film 50 years later, because
Right.
it's unforgettable. That movie is, and they could have just done a broad comedy where they're all crazy and they're just doing
Right.
crazy, you know, but they didn't. They went for the heart, and we remember that movie.
Well, Dave, you should definitely look up King of Hearts because it's an all-time masterpiece.
Dude,
You would love it.
I've written these down.
Okay, well, this was really great. Thank you guys so much. It was really fun. And very
It's
much
really fun.
the kind of fun we're trying to have with this podcast. So this is great. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
All right. Dave Barlow and Tim Fried Fiori, theater professionals. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
All right. So long.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.